Hi everybody. So this is a short video showing how to on some basic synthesis stuff. So using some of the more basic synthesizers within Logic to kind of go over some of these principles. So I'm going to start with a software instrument. Obviously, I'm going to be playing a MIDI software instrument. In this case, I'm not going to go to the browser. I don't want to do that because I need to open up a very specific instrument, a very specific synthesizer. So I go down to my channel strip of my instrument, and I'm going to click on the instrument little tab, and I choose a list, or I have a list of instruments. These in this category are all the ones that, of course, come with Logic. So lots of instruments that can be used. These are ones that have just whoever's used a computer has recently used. So this is a list down below where you say AU instruments. That's where we get into third party, that is companies other than, in this case, Apple, who we have different products in the lab. I have a lot at home. You can see different companies, synthesizers and samplers and stuff like that. For this though, we're going to use Logic's basic monophonic synth called the ESM, M for monophonic. Remember, monophonic of course means it can play one note at a time. So this particular synthesizer, bring it over here, this is designed to make that a little bit bigger maybe. Come on. I guess that's as big as it'll go. This is designed to do bass lines. It doesn't have to be used for bass lines, but that's what it's kind of good for. It's kind of basic. So it's not a particularly well-designed synth. It has all the things that you need, but it's not really labeled particularly well. Some things aren't labeled at all, and sometimes the labeling doesn't make a whole lot of sense. For example, it says filter over here, but really this cutoff frequency knob here and the resonance, this down the middle is really your filter. This is basically filter modulation. So that's a little confusing, but what we have here, this is the main oscillator where it says mix, and I have between a sawtooth wave to a square wave and anything in between. It's pretty basic because these are basic waveforms. For bass lines, a lot of times you don't want a particularly complicated sound anyway, so that's good. So I could start there kind of where I want that to be. Now, if we could see the shape of this waveform, we'd basically be seeing these sawtooths kind of morphing into a square wave, but we just kind of have to listen to it and figure out where we like that. Okay, so that's just starting with the sound. The cutoff and the resonance are the two most important parts of the synthesizer. That's why on this they have the oscillator with a big knob and then these two with equally large knobs because they're more important than other things. So the cutoff, this is going to open the filter to allow higher frequencies through. So if I start playing with that, you hear how the timbre changes, and that's simply because it's letting higher harmonics through on the sound. Okay. Now I can raise the resonance. The resonance of the cutoff location. In other words, what frequency is going to resonate more? That is, what's going to be louder? It's where I set my cutoff. At that point, that particular higher frequency. So if I really boost my resonance, hear that whistling sound, but I can also hear that kind of higher frequency a little bit better as I move this. I'm going to turn some of this stuff off to make it, here we go. So you can really hear those higher pitches that are happening. And that's because my resonance is just so high. Normally you wouldn't necessarily have it that high. That's just matter of taste. Normally maybe you'd be somewhere in this mid-range where you don't necessarily hear the extra pitches, but it definitely changes the timbre of the instrument. And of course, as we close the filter, it becomes more dull. Just like if I'm closing a door on some music playing in another room, it kind of filters out a lot of the higher frequencies, so you're left with the duller sound. Okay, so you kind of set it where you want it. Now this synthesizer, when we get into the amplifier section, this is typically where you'd see an envelope for the volume change over time. You know, how fast is the attack, how fast does it release, that type of stuff. Since this is designed for bass sounds, this synthesizer doesn't really allow you to change. It doesn't allow you at all to change the attack, because basses should have fast attacks. A bass instrument is part of the rhythm section, so if the rhythm is really slow attack, that wouldn't help very much. So it doesn't let you change that. All you can change is the decay. What that'll do to the sound, and the decay is the second part of an ADSR envelope. So we have the attack, in this case fast, is the decay slow in this case, or really fast if I move it this way. The difference is decaying to the sustain level. That is, what volume is the note going to be while you hold it down. So notice that when I play a note and hold it, it kind of has a maintained volume level when it gets to its sustained level. How fast it gets there, in this case, it takes a while for it to get there. It's kind of long, but now I'm going to make it really fast, and it just kind of disappears. Now we can hear that decaying to nothing in this case. And just how long. The reason that's decaying to nothing is because the next stage, the sustain level, is also not something that you can change on the synthesizer. It will eventually sustain or go to the sustain level of 0, meaning silence. So you'll eventually have just how fast is it going to get to silence. Now, you also can control the release, which is when I let go of the note, how long does it take to actually go to silence when I let go? Well, that's the release, and it's pretty quick. But so really the only thing I can change is how fast does it get to that sustain level. So if I want that type of sound, a short bass sound, no matter how long I hold the key down, it's going to be short. Something like that. Okay, so those are kind of the basic things. There are some other things here that will change the filter. For example, do I want the filter to kind of move over time, kind of like an envelope? Here, kind of sounding like it's opening and closing. Open, close. Okay, so that's the basics of that. Now, I'm going to get rid of this synthesizer. I'm going to create a new one and look at a slightly more complicated one. I'm going to go into my instrument area, and I'm going to go to this time to the ESP, the polyphonic synth. You'll notice, since this is designed by, well, the company before Apple had Logic was called eMagic, and that's what this is, an old synth, but it's pretty useful. It does a lot of the same basic stuff that we had, but just adds a bit more. So you can see over here in the oscillator section, I have more choices of how I'm going to mix to get that starting timbre. This is a triangle wave. I've got sawtooth, I've got square, and then this, hard to tell, but that says -1 and this says -2. Those are basically sub-oscillators. Bring in square waves that are an octave below or 2 octaves below. I'll show you what that sounds like. So there's the sound all by itself. Here's with a 1 octave sub-oscillator and then 2 octaves. So you hear it's adding like kind of 1 or more octaves in there. If I want to add noise, kind of gives it a little type of sound. Maybe if you want to create a snare type of sound or just more noise in the sound, you can use that. Otherwise, I kind of mix this based on which of these oscillators I like. So I kind of have three octaves playing right now. Okay, in the middle is our frequency and our resonance. So this is our filter, of course. This is our cutoff frequency. This knob is either going to be labeled as cutoff or frequency, but it's known in entirety as the cutoff frequency knob. So this is my filter. Where do I want to open the filter to allow higher frequencies to pass? So if I open it this way, then I'll hear more of those higher frequencies and the timbre will change. A dull sound, a brighter sound. Okay. Resonance, again, is going to boost wherever I have this set. It's going to boost that particular frequency. So again, it's just a way to kind of get the timbre the way you want it. This synthesizer in the amplifier section has a full ADSR envelope. So it's right now, this is fast all the way down. My attack is fast. If I move it up, you hear how it takes a while for the volume to increase from when I strike a key. When I let go, the release is pretty fast. But I can make that a really slow release. So when I let go, it took forever for that to go to silence. So just various ways you can kind of shape a sound to do what you want. If I want a pad type sound, it's almost like it has a reverb effect, but it's not reverb. It's just a really slow release in that case. Okay, so I can do kind of some interesting stuff with the shape of my envelope. Okay, and the last little section is oh, by the way, so I can also have some built-in effects. I've got a chorus. So it just kind of makes it sound a little fuller. It's doing a stereo chorus, kind of detunes it a bit. And I've got an overdrive, which can add some distortion if it plays really loud. So last little section here is the LFO. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. Well, like many of these synthesizers, that the basic ones that are old that come in Logic, not particularly labeled. You have to know what this thing is from your knowledge of synthesis, because it doesn't say LFO anywhere, but that's what it does. LFO is so low that you cannot hear the actual frequency. It's used to modulate or change my sound in some way. So I can use it on this particular synthesizer to either affect the pitch, which is going to create a vibrato type of sound, or I can have it affect the filter, which is going to create what they're calling like a wah pedal type of thing. How fast it does that is controlled, of course, with speed. So if I want to have vibrato, that is pitch going up and down, I have to set that, but then I'll have to set my speed in some way. Make that sustain level so it actually holds it. And then I can increase the amount it's going to go up and down in pitch. So kind of crazy special sound effect in that case. Hopefully no one would play an instrument or sing with that much vibrato. But you can control how wide is a vibrato and how fast. So that's that. Clicking this O to get it right in the middle again, and I won't hear any because there's zero vibrato happening. If I put it on the wah side, it's essentially like this frequency filter knob opening and closing as fast as I have this set. So if we could see it, this thing would be opening and closing super fast. Here it would be opening and closing really slowly. So you can hear it's a cyclic effect just over and over again. Okay, so it just gives you a little more choices on this particular synthesizer compared to the ESM. One more just to show you the complexity of how this can get. I'm going to do another software instrument. This time I'm going to actually use a AU instrument from a company called Audio Damage. I'm going to use this one called Basic. And there we go. Okay, so this one, it seems, that seems really crazy more complicated, but it's not really. Most synthesizers, if they're subtractive synthesizer, have those three elements, that is an oscillator, a filter, and an amplifier to control the volume. usually then all a synthesizer designer does, if it's a subtractive synth, is just add more of those. So in this case, we have oscillator 1, and I can choose what waveform I wanted to create. I have oscillator 2, same thing, and oscillator 3. I can tune them differently, so I have them playing different pitches. Well, it's not playing for me now. That's okay, because I just want to demonstrate what it's doing. And then, of course, volume levels for each one. I have 2 filters. It simply says that I'm going to take all this sound, combine them together, and then put it through my filter. Here's my cutoff frequency, so I'm opening or closing my filter. And then if I want the resonance, boost. And then if I use a second filter, it would go straight into that. Right now, filter 2 is open all the way, which, like anything else, if a gate is open, everything's passing through. So if I want to filter the sound yet again, I can do that. But then I have 2 envelopes. I have an amplifier envelope, so to adjust the attack, decay, sustain, release for my volume. And then I have the attack, decay, sustain, release for my filter. And then this one also has an LFO, and I can choose what it's going to modulate, either the pitch of one or more oscillators, or if it's going to do the filter, I can say down here, like, make sure the LFO is affecting my filter 1. So I just have more choices, but it allows me to create more complicated sounds. Okay, so that is it. That's just the basics of synthesis. Any subtractive synthesizer will again have at least those 3 things: an oscillator section for your source, a filter to actually change the timbre, and then an amplifier section which controls the volume and may include an envelope to control how the volume changes over time. Okay, so that's it.